Gee, Steve, what are we going to do tonight?
Same thing we do every podcast. Tell him how we sees it.
A minor and an F sharp. You know that it would be untrue. You know that I would be a liar if I was to say to you, girl, we couldn't get much higher. Come on, baby, light my fire. G-A-D.
Pretty good, pretty neat.
Try to set the night on fire.
That's great, Robbie. You got some nice changes in there,
Any more
man.
lyrics?
Yeah, some. I call it Light My Fire. Figure if I'm gonna compete with your stuff, it better be about earth, snakes, or fire. So.
I like it. Sounds like the Birds, though, man. But I like it. I like it. It's good. A little Latin beat will do it some justice.
Maybe put a couple long solos over, like
start over.
like Coltrane did on My Favorite Things.
Start over, man.
Yeah, A minor, B minor, it's jazz.
Yeah, man, yeah.
Need some kind of intro.
No time to wallow in the mire. Try now, we can only lose. And our love becomes a funeral pyre. Come on, baby, light my fire. Is that good?
No, but I
Come
like
on,
it.
baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire. Fire!
John! Robbie! Hey, man, can you give me another
Can
something?
only lose.
Can you give me about 5 minutes? I gotta
Love
figure out some
becomes
kind of
a
intro.
funeral pyre.
Let's let them work.
You like that?
Yeah, I like it. Go to the beach, man.
Funeral pyre. Funeral pyre.
I got it. I got the intro, man. Hang on a second. John, count off from 4, man.
1, 2, 3.
Here we go. It's How He Sees It, episode 291.
Oh, I like
This
how you
week
said
we're-
that all sexy like.
Well, I was trying to get out my inner Jim Morrison. You know, he's got that voice.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
the opening of the movie we're covering this week is The Doors. It starts off with this iconic voiceover. He's like, "Is everybody in?"
Is everybody
you know,
in
and
the house? Yeah, that's read from some of his writings, right? His poetries.
Yeah, it's poetry.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's in one of his songs too, maybe, or maybe I'm just I've seen that opening before and heard that, and it just made me think it was from one of his songs. But yeah, it's just one of those really cool kind of things. And so yeah, we're covering The Doors. We're doing a Val Kilmer kind of I don't want to call it a retrospect, but just we're just getting on Val Kilmer's case for a little bit here. We're gonna cover The Doors. We got upcoming. We've got our throwback for the month of July. We're gonna do Real Genius, which is another Val Kilmer, and then we're also gonna cover Tombstone, because if you're gonna do Val Kilmer, you've got to do Tombstone.
Yeah. Yes.
I think it's just one of his most iconic roles, just because of the character and how he does it and how it comes off. So, but this was another one that, to me, set Val Kilmer like, this guy can act. This guy has something special. Now, it might be partly because how closely he resembled physically, vocally, and just in mannerisms of the real Jim Morrison. And you know, one of the things that made me just realize how well he did was the actual members, the surviving members of the band, were saying that when he was doing his songs and his version, you know, his actual singing of them, they didn't know.
They couldn't tell the difference. Yeah.
Right.
I read that too.
Cool story, and I can't remember the names of it. I think it was actually Val Kilmer went to Oliver Stone to get this thing, or something to prove something for singing. And he says, okay, I'm going to play you 3 songs. 2 of them are Jim Morris. 1 is me. Tell me which ones it is. And so he played him the 3 songs, and he goes, okay, well, this is this one and this one and this one. And he goes, okay, well, all 3 of those were me. And I'm like, that's fucking genius if that's true. It's on the internet, so it's got to be true.
Yep.
So I was just like, that's so cool.
I think he released his demo tape, or his audition tape that he sent to Oliver Stone on his documentary that was released a couple years ago. I think it's just called Val.
Oh, okay.
So during this month, that's something I really want to check out. I have not yet, and I've heard really good things about it. I think even Nina's brought it up before as being really good. I think it's an autobiographical movie, of a lot of his own footage that he put together before his death. So.
Well, that would be really, really cool to see. I'm all about that because he is great. I think it's one of the coolest things is that, just the stuff that he's done. I heard that was really good. And then there's also another Doors documentary that actually gives more truthfulness and story to the Doors, and actually delves more into the full band rather than, realistically, this movie should have been called Jim Morrison because it wasn't the Doors. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And so there's, it's a little bit more into the actual, and I was trying to find it. Someone had said it was on Amazon, but I don't think it's on there anymore.
The documentary. I watched the movie, and it took me some time to get through, just because it's very Jim Morrison heavy, and it's very much the side of him that's steeped in 10 pints of bourbon, that just go down with every scene. And so it's a little hard to stomach sometimes. And then you see there's so much footage on YouTube, behind the scenes footage, where, he kind of has this, high quality about him, but he doesn't come across as that obnoxious. And so I'd like to see that side of him a little bit more. And I don't know if we'll ever really know the truth. You hear what some of the other band members have said, and some, I think Ray Manzarek was not happy with the direction Oliver Stone took with the movie. He wanted it to be more about the 4 of them.
Yes.
So he didn't want to have anything to do with the movie. And Oliver Stone was under a lot of pressures, or there were some legal requirements he had and things like that, which I'll talk a little about when we get to my drink. But it's, I don't know if we're ever going to really know the real Morrison. He died the year we were born, or the year after we were born. It's
one of those sad things that it is the case. We'll talk a little bit more about all of that here quickly, because you brought up your drink.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, I was like, I'm looking at mine right now, and I'm like, I need to get into that. So that's what we're going to do. Because here on How We Seeez It, we create a cocktail or a drink that we pair with whatever it is we're watching. And this week we're doing the Doors. So I'm going to jump into mine real quick because I want to get a sip of this. For me, The Doors is all about the music. I watched this movie in the 90s when it came out in 91. It was in a phase where I started getting really into rock and roll, especially old rock and roll. And the music to me was just so incredible. And that's, I think I remember this movie fondly because of the songs that it got me into and listening to their stuff, and how iconic it is to me for that. And watching this movie again, I was blown away by the music in the background, but I was also blown away about, man, this movie is not what I remember. But one of the things it has one of the most iconic songs for me is Riders on the Storm.
Oh yeah.
And it's just one of those ones is no matter when it comes on, it's just, you got to sit and just kind of take it in. And
that's from LA Woman, right? Their last album that I believe.
I couldn't tell you for sure. I think I think the main one I had it on cassette, and I think it was the actual soundtrack for the movie.
Sure. Yeah.
Which, interestingly enough, they actually released all the Doors releases, none of the Val Kilmer songs.
Right.
And so I thought that was kind of interesting when I found that out. But I do remember listening to it. And L.A. Woman is another song that's just incredible to me. Riders on the Storm. I was listening to these on the way home today from work. So I did what I call a Riders on the Dark and Stormy. And to me, it kind of worked out. I was kind of thinking what I wanted to do. And the reason I went with this is, first off, the Riders on the Storm. It just leads right into the title of the drink, a Dark and Stormy, which is basically a rum and ginger beer. I added a little bit of different. And so I went with two different rums. I went with the Kraken Gold Spiced rum. And I went with that because the Kraken to me is it's a beast. And that's what Jim Morrison was in this. He's a beast. He's an animal. He even calls himself a monster at one point in the movie. And so just to me, I was like, oh, the spiced rum, and it's kind of monstery. So I go with that. But the other thing
Kraken's
is
kind of got scales too, like a lizard, right? He's a lizard.
Yeah, the Lizard King.
Maybe you can kind of draw some sort of parallel there.
The other one I went with is a Blackstrap rum, which is it's kind of a heavy burnt molasses kind of rum, and it's very dark. And throughout this film, he's talking about death and how he wants to die, or will you die for me? And a lot of death, which is really dark. And this Blackstrap rum is really dark and heavy, and so I wanted to go with that. So I went with 1.5 ounces of both of those. But then I wanted to liven it up a little bit, and I've gotten into this it's a lime-infused simple syrup that I got on Father's Day when we were out at one of the local distilleries in one of their cocktails. I had it, and I was like, oh, I like that. And I've been using it a lot lately in my own drinks, and I was like, oh, I'm going to use that in this just to sweeten it up a little bit and add that lime for a little bit of that citrus kick. Then I went with a Fever Tree ginger beer on this, just because Fever Tree is what I go with a lot. I like it a lot. I go with the low calorie version because I'm trying to watch my figure. But this is my Riders on the Dark and Stormy, and here we go. That Blackstrap molasses rum kicks in so heavily on this in a good way.
It rocks.
It does. It really. It's almost like how mezcal in the smokiness, and a mezcal comes in a tequila, where it's like it's there and you notice it, but it's not in a bad way. That's what this is.
Depends, but yeah, okay, nice.
I mean, for me, like in a Paloma, that smokiness, you're like, oh, that's not going to go well, but it actually really does. This is kind of what this is. It's got a almost a burnt kind of hit to it, almost like a burnt caramelized flavor, and it's really, really good. So
that's great. Sounds good.
I'm all about it.
All right. Yep. You got a lot there.
Yep. All right, Steve, what do you got for us?
All right. You talked about the beginning. The movie starts out with him reading from his writings, and you rightly mentioned that it's probably lyrics, not his poems. And I did a little research because, well, there's a line later I'm going to get to, but I think Pam, his girlfriend, or his the ornament,
common law wife.
Okay,
what she ended up being.
Okay, had the rights to his writings, and then she died a few years later, and so those rights passed on to her parents, and apparently they were really against Oliver Stone using any of those writings or poems in the movie. He was under a little, but I did notice in one of the scenes towards the end, if you have the non-director's cut, because in the director's cut apparently he cut the scene out, but the scene where he's after the trial,
hands out the books.
It's after the trial, and he's hanging off the side of the building.
Oh,
yeah. He's talking about death and jumping and stuff like that. Apparently, he cut that out of the director's cut of this, and then later regretted it, or called the final cut. But he mentions a line which caught my attention, and it's Ophelia, mad, stifled witness, so I looked it up, and it turns out it was from a line of one of his poems called Ode to L.A. while thinking of Brian Jones, deceased, quote unquote, which is from some of his writings. And interesting, Brian Jones was another member of the 27 Club, another person who died when they were 27, along with Jim Morrison. But so I did a little bit more research on his writings and poetry, and I found the lost writings of Jim Morrison from a book called Wilderness. This is volume 1, and there's a whole passage that I drew from about bourbon. He had a quote, "Why do I drink? So that I can write poetry." And then I'm going to read you this passage about bourbon because this is what inspired my drink. And so here's the passage. Bourbon is a wicked brew recalling courage milk, refined poison of cockroach and tree bark, leaves and fly wings scraped from the land, a thick film, menstrual fluids no doubt add their splendor. It is the eagle's drink. So that's the writing. That's one of the pages. It just has that on it. That's it. So I don't know if there's a title, but I thought cool because he does a lot of drinking of bourbon in the movie, and almost it's a little bit overboard with as far as from a that's a big part of the film, which I question whether. I know he had his the last few years of his life apparently he did a lot of drinking, but.
Yeah, I'll cover that a little bit when we talk more about the
that's
movie.
fair. That's fair. But I used the writings from this to build my drink, and I called it, like the last line, it is the Eagle's drink. I called my cocktail the Eagle's drink. So I used, I started with Heaven's Door bourbon. I looked for a bourbon with an eagle on it, but the only one I found was Black Eagle bourbon, and that looked like a crappy bourbon. So I thought Heaven's Door sounded interesting, and it was.
I like that. I saw that name and I was like, ooh.
So it's a Heaven's Door Revival bourbon, 2 ounces of that. So that's the Wicked Brew, recalling that courage milk. And then I used a half ounce of Chinar, which brings in that bitter, earthy element, which is his quote, tree bark, leaves, and fly wings scraped from the land. Then I used some blood orange juice, squeeze some juice from blood orange, half ounce of that. That's I drew that from the menstrual fluids adding their splendor. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Then I used some Amontillado sherry. For its dry age character. I liked that idea as far as part of the refined poison line that seemed to fit with there. Added a little, it was about just a 1/4 ounce of the Amontillado sherry, half ounce of some 2-to-1 ratio turbinado syrup, just to add some extra sweetness, a little rough around the edges. I used egg white, again, that kind of alludes to that courage milk. It's also kind of a maternal idea, like milk, gotcha. Mother's milk, and the egg, is a reference to fertility, and so I liked that. And I topped it with Peychaud's bitters. Again, you're getting some of that bleeding, bright red, which again kind of leans into that idea of the bleeding flourish that he refers to. So again, I tried to draw all my ingredients from this little poem, and the title itself, The Eagle's Drink. It looks pretty. I have not tasted it yet, but it's kind of up my alley with a lot of these ingredients, so we'll see.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a drink you would come up with. I love how you find some obscure touch to the movie and things, and then you basically find these one-of-a-kind ties to your ingredients. You do such a good job with that.
Sometimes I get a little nervous that there's a lot of things in this movie that it's like, oh, this sounds like a good name, because he's got so many names of songs and all these different things, and I didn't want to overlap. Sometimes I want to text you and say, hey, if I call my cocktail this, is that going to overlap on you? But this one I thought was completely out of left field. So.
Oh, it was. Yeah, I think it was two streets over from left field actually. But that's you.
I thought I tied it in pretty well, and I like it. It's
you
really
did
good.
But I mean, because the fact that you brought this from a poem and then went back deep into this and find this other, you do an incredible job with finding ties to the movies like that, and it's one of the reasons I love hearing what you come up with your drinks.
I think that was something about the movie that I was drawn towards the performance. I think Val Kilmer does a wonderful job.
Yes.
But I was more interested in doing my own kind of research, mainly on YouTube, just looking up some videos. Mm-hmm. And then again, I drew some inspiration from some of these poems I found. But I was really drawn towards who I saw on the screen that didn't quite match Val Kilmer. Now, I do think that was a side of Jim Morrison that Val Kilmer embodied really quite well. But I still kind of wanted to see something. He at the beginning he talks about it. He's shy. He couldn't even sing to the crowd, which early on, they showed us a side of that, but it just kind of completely went away. Or maybe he just drowned himself in liquor to overcome his shyness.
Yeah, I'm not sure which is more realistic or not. And so, when we first started talking about doing Val Kilmer movies, this one jumped right to the top of my brain.
Yeah,
for two reasons. I was like, I remember this movie being so awesome and crazy cool, and it got me into the music. And I remember the cover art. Like, this is another one that you walk past this at Blockbuster and you recognize it right away because it's just this incredible visual on the cover art. Watching this movie, I was like, my memories are tainted. I don't know where, how, or why. This is not the movie I remembered.
I get you.
It is in a way, but it's not. Because I remembered, I just remembered it being a better movie and more entertaining and less of this dragging Jim Morrison through the mud kind of thing. And I listened to some other podcasts and it dawned on me listening to these other people and their takes on this. And this is all recent takes too, all from the last couple years or even this year. That man, they show such a bad side of him, and it's not the only side of him. And you talked about him being at the very beginning, and apparently Jim Morrison was much more of a shy guy, and he even was that all the way through. Not just in that very beginning, and then all of a sudden he pops out of his shell and he's always shirtless and being an asshole, and yes, he was drunk. They made this seem like he was much more of a drug addict than he actually was, according to the band members. And that's one of the reasons. I know you mentioned something about some of the band members not really signing up for this movie afterwards. Matter of fact, I think only one of them ended up doing a cameo when they all had signed up. They all were wanting to be in this when it first came out. And then when they read and what they were doing, they were like, no, you are not telling the right story. This is not who it is. And it's kind of interesting. And most of the people I listened to had the same take on it. It was like, this is not a documentary type film that you want to lead your opinion of Jim Morrison. It's almost like, let's scrape off just the top pieces of shit and show that and nothing more. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what I felt afterwards. I was like, yeah, I kind of get where it is.
I watched, this week, I also watched Goodfellas, Martin Scorsese. It's from about the same period of time, which is also based on a true story from the book called Wise Guys that goes through the life of the main character is, I can't remember the actor's name. We covered him. He recently passed away too. He was in the Bear movie. What was the one with the Cocaine Bear?
Okay. I thought you were talking about the series The Bear.
I know. Yeah.
I was like, I don't remember anybody there, but yeah, gotcha.
But my point is, Goodfellas, I thought, did a really good job being very, it kind of set the audience up to just be enamored with this lifestyle. You really fell in love with the characters and their lifestyle. I know Joe Pesci's character kind of freaked people out, rightly so. But
yeah.
you understood from the point of view of the main character, the draw, the romance, the attraction to this gangster lifestyle. And then in the end, when he kind of gets into his heroin day or whatever, maybe it's cocaine. I can't remember exactly what it is, but they kind of show his downfall into the drugs there. But I thought that movie did a much better job kind of drawing us into the romance of something and then showing kind of the effects of if you take it the wrong direction. This movie, I thought it was all just complete chaos and didn't establish maybe just a little bit at the beginning kind of his charm and in his meeting of his Pam and some of the and when they wrote a few songs and stuff, but it was brief, and then it just immediately launched into his drunken downfall, or kind of this obnoxious pretentiousness. I mean, even when he shows his film in film school, and Oliver Stone plays the role of the instructor and says something about it being pretentious or something like that. It's like, well, yeah, you're right, but they didn't really shy away from that.
Here's another thing that really, when I found out the truth of stuff afterwards. First off, he didn't quit film school. He actually graduated.
Right. Yep.
Right. And so to start off with something like that, to me, that's just a dishonest. Wasn't needed.
Well, that doesn't bother me too much. I think they're trying to tell a story, and sometimes you have to have a little dramatic flair. And so,
well, that's
I get
changed
you.
him.
I get you.
Drastically.
Yeah.
And you were thinking of Ray Liotta.
Ray Liotta. Thank you. I'm sure I'll get a text from from someone.
From Bo.
Yeah. well, he's watching this, and which I appreciate. But yeah, thank you for answering the question.
Yep. I had to look it up. I'm not that IMD Steve all the time, but
that was back in my 30s. I'm not there. I'm not the same IMDb as I used to be.
Yeah. But no, you're right. It's like it does start off with that, and it just, to me though, I remembered it so much more incredible, and it was sad to me watching this again and seeing how harsh it is, and but you're right. They take, creative licenses to make it entertaining and stuff like that. And
it's like the Ed Sullivan Show, when he said, it was very true that they asked him not to say the line higher, and they asked him to say make it better, or whatever that line was. And in the movie, you get a kick out of watching him kind of lean into it higher, yeah. But then you watch the actual footage, and he just sings it. And, and is that creative license? Is that fair? Yeah, I think so. But I don't know. Who's to say?
The quitting of film school is definitely creative license. Now, also, from what I understand, the two major women in this, right? You got Pamela Corson, played by Meg Ryan, and the other was Kathleen Quinlan.
Right? Yep.
Plays Patricia Kinnelly, are a culmination of women throughout his life.
Well, Pam,
not necessarily.
You mean the other one, right?
Well, they say Pam is a legit, definite. She was there for a lot of it, but he didn't meet her as early as they have him meeting her in this either.
Okay.
Is what I understand from the internets. So take it as it is.
Interesting that the one who played Kathleen Quinlan was, who did she play? She played
Patricia.
Yeah, Patricia Keneally was actually in the movie. She was the one who wed them in that blood ceremony. But I think she was a little upset at the portrayal as well, because it wasn't.
Well, yeah, he apparently slept with a lot of reporters. He slept with a lot of women. Like, so the scene where he gets roughed up by the cop in the shower, apparently that is a accurate-ish thing that happened, but it wasn't her as the reporter. It was some co-ed from the school had got back there. So it was some young girl from the school. And
what do you think of that change? To me, that seems very fair. You're trying to
I'm okay with that. That's
too many characters on there, and you're still sticking to the essence of the person.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay mixing characters down into one, having things like that. That doesn't change the idea of what the story was. But what changes the story is having him so, like, they really made him seem like a druggie more than just an alcoholic, and that's apparently not the case. He was more just an alcoholic. Severe alcoholic,
okay.
But I thought they really upped the they're walking down the street and it's like, oh, are you already on acid? Yeah, and it's just, apparently from the other band members, he didn't do drugs like that.
Yeah, the Thanksgiving scene was completely made up, according to Oliver Stone.
So was apparently a lot of some of these scenes were like the desert scene, right? Very
right. They never did
big
that.
Part of this.
You mean when they went out, all of them, and got
to
into
take
their
peyote
acid trip?
in the desert?
Peyote, right.
Yeah, never happened.
Right.
And apparently, one of the I think it's Robbie Keegers. He was the guitar player. I think he's the one that said that, in the movie, he's like, oh, my dad doesn't like me or whatever, or there's something with my dad. Apparently, his parents called him after that, asking, is that true? And he's like, no, I don't know what this was totally made up. We never even went to the desert. It's like, so things like that. The other band members in this, you got Ray Manzarek. Manzarek.
Yep.
Kyle MacLachlan. Incredible. Like he he is so good in this, and it actually makes me want, like, for some reason, what he did in this movie and what I learned about the Doors and what I learned about Ray. I want a movie about the Doors. I want a movie about more from Ray's perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe they'll do that. I'm not, I wonder if they kind of, Val Kilmer was so well known for this role that I think it added some appreciation to this movie when it maybe didn't deserve it as much,
I think you might be right.
And after his maybe, you don't want to. It's not just Jim Morrison now, it's Jim Morrison and Val Kilmer's legacy and stuff. And now that Val Kilmer's passed, maybe that does kind of present the opportunity to maybe give it another shot and with a different perspective. Maybe that's not appropriate for me to be saying like that. That's like stomping on someone's graves, but I'm not. I'm just throwing it out there.
I would love to see a more band rate basic movie, but Frank Whaley played Robert Krieger as the guitar player. One of the things I really found interesting, and he loved the scene where they show that Jim Morrison didn't write all the songs, that he's the one that actually had the song Light My Fire, and it started from him, and so he was super happy that made it. And
a lot of their hits were from him, Touch Me and there are a couple other big ones. Good on Oliver Stone for at least writing that into the script.
And then the other one, John Dinsmore, the percussionist. I love the Kevin Dillon. I rewatching this, I could not get over. Every time I saw him, all I could think of is his brother, Matt Dillon. Oh, and I was like, he looks just like a baby Matt Dillon.
I had a hard time seeing Frank Whaley, playing Robbie Krieger, because he's the kid that gets killed in Pulp Fiction. He's the one that's drinking the big kahuna. No, not that one. The big kahuna. He's the one that's sitting in this seat where the first time that Sam Jackson does his biblical verse and shoots him down. That's the guy he shoots. That's the face I remember whenever I look at Robbie Krieger in The Doors.
That's funny. I get you. But I thought one of my favorite scenes in this, and it's a very quick and easy. It's like a boring scene, but it's when they're walking up to early in their stage presence. They're walking up, and the reporter's asking them their name and what they do, and they go to John. He's like, John is percussionist.
Yes.
But even better than that is Pamela. Pamela goes, what did she say? Ornament.
Ornament. Exactly. I found that on YouTube, the actual footage. And I was like, oh my, I was so excited.
That's legit from a real scene?
Yeah, I don't think I saw Pam, but the four of them, absolutely. It's exactly like that. And Jim just says great. Jim, and he kind of looks at the camera with a smile. They cut it a little quick on the interview, so it's possible he had some more to say. But they kind of leaned into it a little bit because his presence there when they ask him, name, occupation, he just goes Jim and kind of smiles and is drawn into the camera. It's really sexy and kind of enticing, and to actually see it really happen on YouTube, I'll send you a link because I thought
that'd be great.
It was really neat to see. It's like I've seen the scene so many times in the movie, or not, however many times I've seen the movie. But actually, I think that was something that was in the trailer too. There's a couple shots in this movie that I remember distinctly from the trailer. I believe that scene when they go through the people, and also there's that scene about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way when it shows Jim walking down Hollywood Boulevard or something, or maybe it's some street from far away and walking towards the camera. I think that was the introduction shot of the trailer, to where you see the presence and you get a sense of Jim Morrison's presence before you realize that he's being played by an actor. It almost looks like a documentary, which I thought was a really effective way of introducing him in the trailer.
They did. He looked. They were saying that he even stood like Jim Morrison, but apparently Val Kilmer studied
Well, he got dance coaching from. I think it was Paula Abdul was originally hired to be the dance coach on this, but she said she couldn't understand Jim Morrison's dance moves, so they she left and they brought someone else in. But so he had some help. It wasn't all his own study. There was someone there along the way with him.
Well, what I understand too is that he got so deep into it, like it caused marital strife for himself.
Oh, did it?
Like, yeah, that he got so engrossed in this character and getting ready for this that I don't know if it caused a divorce, but it definitely caused some strife with his then wife at the time, and I can't think of the name.
There was yeah, there was something about a letter was found by the crew that basically laid out how you don't approach him and call him by his real name. You have to refer to him as Jim. Yeah, and I think Oliver Stone was a little upset, and he confronted Val Kilmer, and he said, "That's just for my people, not for the crew." So I didn't get enough information about that, but yeah, it does sound like he was leaning into his acting style. What do they call it when you just become the character? The Daniel Day-Lewis style of acting, where
I was trying to think of
what was it? Alec Guinness? Was it Alec Guinness that was telling Marlon Brando or some actor who was? Or I think it was Dustin Hoffman telling Dustin Hoffman, it's like, why don't you just act?
Yeah, right.
That's what acting is. Not, it's not about becoming the character even when you're not in front of the camera. You turn it on when it's time. But
I can't think of the name of it now. Well, speaking of characters that do that, we just covered someone that also did this. Crispin Glover as Andy Warhol in this.
I know. I saw that. I'm like, oh my God, we just covered Back to the Future.
Which is funny because as soon as that came up, I was like, oh, I know that motherfucker.
Yeah. Well cast. I thought he tried to steal the scene a little too much.
I don't know Andy Warhol enough. I know the name, but I couldn't pick him out of a fucking lineup ever.
I found this phone.
So I wouldn't know if he was right or not. I found
this phone. I'm going to give it to you so that you can speak to God. Oh my God.
He's definitely a weird fucker, but
yeah,
whatever. I know, art people are like that. So it makes sense that, even his little helper guy was kind of, well cast. And you're like, oh my God, this is a total Hollywood. One other cool
was
cameo.
That supposed to be Truman Capote? It gave off the Truman Capote vibe, but he almost seemed too.
It's another real person.
Yeah, too meek to be that. So I could be completely wrong.
I'll see if I can find it. Warhol PR. Oh, I thought they had a better name for him, but it's played by Paul Williams. He gave me Harry Potter Wormtail vibes.
Oh, okay, here I found it. There's a party scene and a character resembling Truman Capote, played by Paul Williams. It is not a direct portrayal of Capote himself. Okay, that's what Google AI is telling me. So there you go.
Well, yeah, it's on the internet, so it must be real.
Considered a Capote-esque figure. So there you go.
Got it. Billy Idol was actually in this movie, and what I found out, and I was excited for that too, that he was supposed to have a much bigger part, but he had gotten into a motorcycle accident and broken, I don't know if both of his legs or one of his legs.
I remember when that happened. That was a big deal. His accident was nasty. I forgot about that.
So
okay.
He had a bunch of lines and actions in this that they had to then transfer over to the character Dog instead of Billy Idol's character Cat. So some of the lines that were for the Cat character, Billy Idol, had to be shifted. And but they did have him in there, so I thought that was kind of cool. But it's kind of a bad timing to really fuck your body up and get cast out of a movie. So, but yeah, it just interesting. One of the things I didn't remember from the movie was how much boobs there was. And I would have thought that as, watching this in 91, I was young, right out of high school, essentially, that I would have remembered that quite a bit. But I didn't. And I was very excited to see that was the case watching this. And I was just like, it's like every time you turn around, there's another boob. And the one that got me the most, that I was a little bit floored by was Meg Ryan.
I was going to say, yeah. And it's just because at one point he moves his head a little bit and then you get, it's like, oh, there we go.
And I was like, wait, Meg Ryan's got a boob out. I'm like, no way, that didn't happen. And I looked it up, and she has actually done more than just that scene. There's at least 4 or 5 other movies that I was like, oh.
I think her career kind of took a nosedive when she leaned into that a movie that was a little bit more gratuitous. Not this movie though. This movie I don't think affected.
She had much bigger roles after this for sure.
Yeah.
You've Got Mail isn't one of the bigger ones. Sleepless in Seattle was after this.
Oh, was it? Wow, I didn't know Sleepless in Seattle was after this. Interesting. The Val Kilmer did an interview on Letterman, right? A little bit. I think it was after the next movie he did, which was Thunderheart. But he was talking about The Doors, and David Letterman was asking him about doing the performances live, and he said it was interesting because, they cast all these people to go nude, and he said, but the energy was as such that even the people that weren't paid to do it were doing it as well. So there was quite a bit more nudity than was actually cast or paid for by the director, by the producers.
So that was the other one that I found out that wasn't as. Granted, it was the 60s, and there was free love and all that, but apparently there wasn't the nudity nearly as much. Like they got all the people coming on stage, and apparently the band members nobody remembers that.
I know that's what I read too. Yeah, no, I don't remember a thing about that happening. That was probably Oliver Stone's trying to kind of get that feeling of hippie
60s.
Free love and stuff.
Yeah,
the vibe, which. Yeah,
or he's just a pervert like the rest of us and wanted to get some free boobs out there.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm all for Oliver Stone on that part. I'm all for it.
Okay.
The other thing is the Morrison always having his shirt off, and the sex symbol thing with him apparently was completely fabricated too. Like he was still a very shy guy, and that may be why he drank so much, is because that was his liquid courage. That he didn't go out shirtless a lot. He still was very reserved, even on stage. He wasn't as, the antics he had here weren't always like, it's almost like they amped it to 11. They always they're like, oh, he did that one time, let's make it like he does it all the time.
I agree. I think I felt like this is probably legit, most of these things they're showing, this side of him, but they took all those extreme moments and put them all together in a way that just created this chaotic character that, yes, it's true, but it's just a sliver of who he was, or at least that's my feeling.
And that's my I don't want to call it is an issue with this movie after the fact.
It's
the fact that it's like, if that's all you ever get is your information on who Jim Morrison was, you've got a very bad recollection of who he was as a person. And that's my biggest problem with it. I think Val Kilmer killed it in this movie. I think he was really well done. I think Oliver Stone shot the shit out of this movie. It's well shot, very well done movie-wise. Story, not as great as it could have been. I think there's some stuff that could have been better.
Yeah, you wonder what sort of responsibility a filmmaker has, especially when you're portraying someone who is a real person that there's legacy.
Yes.
And yet I do feel some of the stuff I read that he was under a lot of pressure from different parties. Oh, you got to share it like this, or you got to show it from this perspective, or, pulling in lots of different directions. And so I admire Oliver Stone, at least, for saying, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to make my movie. That's what it's going to be. But I'm with you. I think it took it a little far. It's not. It makes me want to maybe watch some more documentaries, see if I can get a better understanding.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. Do you think he gets a little bit of a pass because some of the other movies he did?
Oliver Stone?
Yeah,
I don't. Platoon. Well, no, he's Platoon. Sure, that was his.
Born on the 4th of July, JFK.
Yep. Well, JFK. I mean, he has a lot of controversial movies in there where he takes a perspective. He chooses a perspective. He doesn't play when it's documented stuff, when it's stuff that is based in reality. It's tricky because if you put
a lot of those, if you look at it, really.
If you put your point of view on it, you kind of say, I want you to look at this from this lens. Then are you putting your finger on the scale when it comes to history? Or do you have to play more like the impartial This is just, I don't know what the answer is here. I was fascinated by JFK, but it absolutely leaned into this idea that Harvey Oswald, was a patsy, and this didn't, the whole book.
Well, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna. We don't know for sure.
Oh,
and
no.
There's so many stories out there where this one, there's documented footage showing Morrison wasn't that way. That's a little bit where I agree with you. He takes his own take on it. I noticed he did a Nixon movie. I haven't seen that, so I wonder how much did he take on his own on that. Platoon. What did he do differently? I was just looking through some of his stuff.
He typically puts more of a liberal slant on a little finger on the scale of every story he tells. So that's what I found.
Yeah. Well, Natural Born Killers. I wonder how you do that one with a liberal swing, but okay. You know what I'm saying? But no, just another big movie. The one that I didn't even realize he did, a movie I actually really, really enjoy, would love to do someday, is Any Given Sunday.
Oh yeah,
it's a good football
Al Pacino.
movie.
Yeah, that's right.
So I just was wondering, because I mean, you say Oliver Stone, and because of some of the movies he's done, he's just got this. He's almost on a pedestal, like director, in a way, just because of the stuff he's done. Some of those early just killers, Born on 4th of July, JFK, Platoon.
But so much of his stuff is commentary, it's history, it's a perspective.
Talk radio, yeah.
And so he pisses a lot. Talk radio, that's a good one. But that's just I'm
just looking at the names of his movies.
Howard Stern type character that I think gets threatened, and he has to. Gosh, now I can't remember.
He's got Wall Street is another one. Yeah, just crazy. I was just curious because I mean, I don't know a lot about
Snowden was his last movie, yeah.
But just you say Oliver Stone, and you're like, oh yeah, he's one of the big Mount Rushmore type directors. You just say his name, and most people know the name. Couldn't tell you anything about him other than looking it up, But I was like, oh shit, yeah, I know he's a big director. So I was just wondering.
Did you recognize him from the movie? Because he played the instructor that had the goatee.
Yeah. I did learn that, and I know you brought that up earlier. I did not know. I would have never picked it up. I'm not big on knowing behind the scenes people. Like I don't follow the media of like behind the scenes writers, and I would never pick up what's Star Wars.
George Lucas.
If he was sitting down next to me in a coffee shop, I probably would never know.
Okay.
Spielberg, probably the same thing. Funny story, and I might have even said this before. We played hockey at the Snoopy's Arena, right? And it's Charles Schultz was the writer of Snoopy and stuff like that. Very big in this area. I sat on the side of the ice talking to him for about a half hour one day, while my wife was on the ice playing first time, and I had zero clue who he was. Old guy that liked hockey.
Who was it?
Charles Schultz.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Had no idea. Couldn't have told you. And then people afterwards, they're like, "Oh, were you over there talking to Charles Schultz?" I'm like, "Who?" They're like, "He's the guy." I'm like, "Oh shit. Okay, no, I didn't know that." And I thought back to it several times, and I was like, you know what? He probably enjoyed that a lot, because I wasn't, for lack of better words, I wasn't out there sucking his dick because of who he was. We were just talking hockey, which, he was really into. I also got in trouble because I reffed one of the games he played in his senior hockey tournament. I called a penalty on him, which apparently is a no-no when he's playing in his own tournament. You're not supposed to call him for penalties, but I did. And so...
and you think that wasn't a good thing. I'm thinking,
I was told afterwards, like literally by one of the head refs, they're like, "Did you actually call a tripping on Charles Schultz?" And I was like, "Yeah, he tripped the guy." He's like, "Dude, no one calls penalties on him." I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm like, I'm paid to be a ref, not to be a fan.
You remember? Have you seen Knight's Tale? Heath Ledger, and when he goes up against the one in line to be king or something,
Yeah.
And he's like, nobody wants to challenge him when they find out who he is, and he's like, screw it, I'm in, and he goes after it, and that paid off in the end. He got knighted because the guy respected him, and he was a good guy.
I don't think Charles Schultz really was happy that I called him for a penalty, but
different type of
person. He served his 2 minutes. He served his 2 minutes, and but
you had a good conversation with him, and I bet you're right. Is that a lot of people who are used to being recognized, get tired of the sycophants that just show up and try to make conversation. There's no trust in the genuine small talk. Whether it's
we
real
literally were just talking hockey. It was great. It was a lot of fun. This one of the things that really I think resonated with me with this movie was what it did to me after the fact for the Doors music. And and I wonder how many other people I wonder if it's because it was so good and because Val Kilmer was able to actually they didn't lip sync. He literally sang the songs.
Yeah.
And it was so clean that they could do close-ups where they would have the Jim Morrison lyrics and then back up to a far shot and have Val Kilmer's, and you would never know.
Yeah. It was impressive. I agree. It would be nice if they released that as part of the soundtrack. I
think so too.
You could hear that sort of stuff. I remember there was a movie a few years back. What was it? It was the Queen movie. What was it called? The Freddie Mercury one? Was it just called? No, it was called. It was Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody, and it was Rami Malek playing Freddie Mercury. And I always struggled with that casting. I thought he was a good actor, and he, they did good with the prosthetic teeth, and he delivered his lines well. He knew the movements, but he was just a smaller person, and there was something about his smaller presence that always bothered me watching that movie. Is that there was something. Freddie Mercury just to me seems a larger character, and maybe it's because he's a larger than life character or person, just because he's on stage. But it was just something that I never felt they captured correctly with Rami Malek. He got an Oscar for it, so I know. Yeah,
kudos to him. Earlier on, I think it was Sacha Baron Cohen that was almost got the role, which to me he's a bigger presence that might have worked. I don't know how the acting chops would have been, but. I say that because with Val Kilmer, it's not exactly Jim Morrison. I think there's some characteristics you see when you're looking at it, but he had there was something about the presence that just was almost the spit and image of Jim Morrison that you gotta say, man, he was cast well, or he just embodied something so effectively.
He embodied it. Yeah. He had a similar look that helped out. He was able to capture their mannerisms. He was able to sing very similar.
Yeah.
He got the cadence down. He got the vocals down. And it sounded right. So I think that you're right. I mean, if you put those two together, I would say Val Kilmer was a much better
I doubt Rami Malek did any singing of actual songs.
No. Matter of fact, I think that was a horrible Oscar win for him because they basically gave it to the teeth. Because that's really the only thing that, I'm not a big Queen fan. Sometimes I can listen to their songs once.
I know. I remember teasing you because it was on, Queen songs kept showing up on your playlist.
Yes.
And you're like, no, that's not me. I don't know why those songs keep showing up.
It was. We made it was like a 17-hour long playlist for I think it was Alyssa's birthday or something like that. And we added 2 Queen songs. And the next thing you know, every 5th song was a Queen song. Somehow they decided that we liked, and it was what the fuck is going on here? And so it's one of the I don't care for that movie. I don't enjoy it, but I don't enjoy Queen as a band. So it's just what it is.
Did you ever listen to any of the Doors albums? You know, any of the, and I say the albums,
Yes.
I mean their studio albums, because I certainly know all the hits, and I think Oliver Stone, to his credit, he wrote a lot of the scenes with songs in mind. So he's like, okay, this is going to be a break on through segment. He wrote the scene knowing that song is going to be playing in the backdrop or the end, or you know, these different ones, Touch Me. But again, those big hits are the ones I know. When I hear some of these lesser known ones, I struggle a little bit with it. And, you know, I was watching some concerts, and, you know, they're kind of a jam band at times where they'll just go on and on and on and on.
Yes. Okay. I was just going to say that the hits are bangers, right? And it's not just the top 5. Which, you know, a lot of bands, you get past their top 5 and you're like, oh, we're on some B-side shit already. No, these guys have a good set 10, 15 songs that you're like, oh shit, that's
and
a jam.
They're not all the same. They're a lot. They've got the range like crazy, you know, bluesy, jazzy, dark, pop.
And then you get into some of the others and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, you got to be into this. And it is, it's beating that dead horse. Sometimes they go a little long. Even in the movie, there was one of the songs that just like, oh my, this should have been over like a minute ago, you know. And I have to give credit. And this is where watching this movie, listening to the music again, and listening to people talk. Ray, the keyboard player, that dude's a genius. When I started re-listening to these songs again just recently, I was like, the shit he did with the dual keyboard and stuff like it. Because I started listening to this and I'm listening to the songs and I'm like, there's no bass player in this. So he's doing
the bass. It's crazy.
He's doing the bass and the keyboard. He's doing them at the same time. I'm like, that motherfucker's a genius.
I think some of the studio recordings they had a bass player, but
I actually saw a video and it did have another guy in the background playing bass, but I was just like, man, that's some cool ass shit. But it's also some of the stuff too where I'm like, they're playing and Morrison's kind of throwing out some weird poetry shit, which I'm not into. I'm not into poetry nights ever. And the keyboards are just going, and you're like, what the hell? And this is where I give the percussionist John his credit. That motherfucker is a machine, dude, because he was, you know, he's not doing rock ballads where it's like boom, 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 boom. He's literally just keeping that time, and like my arms hurt just air drumming along with him in the car. After about a minute, I'm like, this guy's a beast. And so I give that guy all the props. I kind of hope he looked like Kevin Dillon.
Well, I mean, he was in the movie.
Or vice versa, I guess.
He was in the movie. He was actually the one that was in the studio when
he was
the beginning when Jim Morrison, Val Kilmer was reading his poetry, and the guy that was in the studio, that was the real John Densmore, yeah. So
okay,
and so they did look alike.
Yeah, engineer last session.
Yeah,
they kind of do look alike.
Yeah. A lot of it was the beards too. You know, the way that the kind
They've
of
got the same head.
The
shape.
hair kind of grew in.
Yeah, it's the head shape too. They're very long and thin. But yeah, I couldn't stop thinking of Matt Dillon every time I saw Kevin Dillon. I was just like, oh my God, you're a fucking spitting image of your brother. Like he lost a lot of weight or something. That's all it was.
Right.
But no, the music in this, I think to me was what, if anything, this movie brought that music to a new generation. Right. I remember my dad's talking about the Doors and stuff like that. But as a 90s, early 90s, listening to the rock music, the Doors wouldn't have normally been on my radar until this movie came out.
My first exposure to the Doors wasn't the Doors. It was Echo and the Bunnymen doing a cover of People Are Strange. And I remember hearing the Doors version of that for the first time going, that's wrong. So yeah, but that was me coming from more of a new wave upbringing in the 80s and
that's hilarious.
But it definitely overtook it, and I think the Doors movie really reinvigorated it. You were talking about the drummer John Densmore keeping the rhythm, and I was reading something today earlier. I almost went down the rabbit hole of Mr. Mojo Rising, which is a line from LA Woman.
Yep.
It's also an anagram for Jim Morrison, which apparently when he was singing it, Mr. M.R. Mojo, M-O-J-O, Risin, R-I-S-I-N. If you scramble up the letters, it's Jim Morrison. And when he sang it, I guess he didn't. The rest of the band didn't know what he was singing. But John Densmore, that's a part of the song where the beat gets slow and he has to build up. It's this rising beat. And he thought, oh, that's a really good idea. This idea of mojo rising up, he's building that mojo up and stuff like that. And it wasn't until after the song that Jim Morrison came to him and showed him. He's like, see, he kind of rearranged the letters. It's my name. And they're like blown away by it. And so, but there's an example of the beat kind of not just, he didn't even just stay in time. He had to like slow it down and build it back up. And he said it was, if you check the song, the beat at the beginning of the song and the beat at the end is off by a little bit because he didn't get it quite right, but it was close enough. But yeah, that's all done live in studio. There's no beat track or something that someone's listening to. And I love Jim Morrison's voice is so good in LA Woman. I mean, I think I was listening to some live stuff of him. I'm really impressed at his voice. But LA Woman, his kind of that bluesy way he sings, if you read along with the lyrics, and he's kind of like he's kind of shorthanding all the words in that song. And it just it's awesome. It's so cool and bluesy, and to think that was their last recording session. Then he goes off to Paris, and that's the last they've ever seen him. So I don't think he ever performed that live in front of on stage.
Oh, maybe.
Sorry, I rambled.
I don't know. No. It's funny that you brought that up because I was thinking, I always try and get a good line for the end of the show. And I was listening to I basically did the best of the Doors on the way home from work.
Nice.
And I'd gotten through an LA Woman come on, and it starts with that. Well, these amount of time, you're like, what the fuck are you saying? And I was like, I got to figure out what he says so I can do that as the line. And you're like, what the fuck?
But if you look at the lyrics, it's just a pretty straightforward line. I got to town a few hours ago or something like that.
But he's like, well, I just got to town. I want, like, what the fuck? Yeah,
and it sounds so lyrical the way he sings it.
Yes, it does.
And cool. Weird way to.
And that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like I could do it.
It almost sounds Cajun. Like what's that? If you go down to the bayou and they're talking like that Cajun accent.
You've seen not Family Guy. What's the other one where he's down in Texas? The animated series that has the guy that sells propane. Oh, God damn it.
The dad,
Boomhauer is the character. He always mumbles shit. King of the Hill.
Oh, gotcha.
King of the Hill. There's the character Boomhauer. Now you have Boomhauer singing Jim Morrison songs. Hilarious.
Yeah,
I can tell you right now, it'd be hilarious. But yeah, I thought about that too. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to do some lyrics that I could probably do it if I had the music playing with me, but I can't just do it off the cuff. But you're right.
And he doesn't sound? He doesn't sound drunk when he's singing that. And I think that was something that they struggled a lot with some of his, or at least the movie represented when he was trying to do the touch me and, kind of stumbling through the lyrics and not really being able to hang on to any sort of rhythm. Well, maybe he was drunk and he could stick to a rhythm regardless. Maybe that was true, but I
think it was played up a lot.
Yeah.
For the movie, which like I said, this movie got me into the music, which was great. Val Kilmer killed it in his acting. Most of them did. I think all of them were pretty good. I don't think this put Jim Morrison in the best light. Like if this is all you knew of the Doors and Jim Morrison, you would have the wrong idea of him and probably a negative mindset on him.
And maybe that's okay that he's, again, part of the 27 club. he died young. You can't really completely romanticize him. There's almost a bit of a responsibility if you're going to portray someone that leads this destructive lifestyle and dies at such a young age.
Well,
you can't just write off the responsibility and say that oh, it was, that's it, and turn it into something that people want to mimic and become.
No.
So
what I mean,
I agree. I'm just trying to throw that out there as a point of view that I think is still important. From
a lot of people I listen to talk about this, and I mean, I listened to about 6 different podcasts, and some of them were hard to listen to because 2 of them were from like the UK, so strong British accents, and I was like, "Fucking, oh my god, you guys are killing me." But it was a lot of it was Jim Morrison was a tortured soul, essentially, right? He was this, he this tortured poet and stuff like that, and I don't think that came across as well. It came across more of this party guy, this drugs are everything, and that's what I mean is like you could have went 2 different ways in this, and Oliver Stone took, and I'm going to say it, he took the easy way out.
Okay.
Yes, it would have been a harder movie to make him that tortured soul and not have him be just this off the cuff fucking drunk, drugged out, everything is haphazard and sleeps with everything
he didn't have to walk as much of a tightrope, because when you romanticize it too much, it does get risky that you're trying to glamorize it. I know, I'm just saying, you're right. That is almost like the director taking the easy road by saying, I don't want to risk romanticizing this character, even though it's really worth exploring. But yeah, it's risky.
Write a better movie to do it. You got to write a tighter movie, and I think it was like they took the easy way out.
True, but that then you get into the risk of having to take a lot of liberties if you really want to dramatize it some way.
I think they did more so than maybe if they wouldn't have.
Okay,
you know what I mean? Now, regardless, this was a box office flop, essentially.
Sure. Yeah, it didn't even make its money back, did it?
Right.
Like maybe a couple million.
No, it didn't. No, it's like 4 million short.
Okay.
Or
budget 32.
There's a lot of zeros in there.
34.4. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, there's a lot of zeros in there. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not mathing well right now. But yeah, it definitely didn't make its money back, which in another way, it's like, was he worried that was the case? Is like, oh, if I make it too much of the tortured soul and too much of a potentially likable character, will they consider a art house film? And
well, maybe you look at the movies that Stone did around that time. It was sandwiched between Born on the 4th of July and JFK. So and when I mean sandwiched, I mean they're all within a year. This is back to back. He's coming off of Wall Street and Platoon, so he had a lot of liberties that he was allowed to take because he was delivering a lot of successful movies that had the attention of the public. So he probably said, you know what, screw it. I want to do the Doors movie. I don't care if I make money. I want to tell this story because it's more interesting. It's someone I'm really drawn towards, and I want to get to the bottom of his character. Did he do it? And we're sharing that maybe our younger selves were a little bit more enamored because we're a little bit more in a position to be looking for role models in kind of more of a twisted way at that age, whereas now we're a little bit more mature and we look back on this character and go, what, this is.
Well, and I'm looking at this too. Doors was released in 91 and so was JFK.
Yeah.
There was only 2 years before that, there was 4th of July. So was this a case of he had too much on his plate and was stretched himself a little thin?
I don't know. Probably. I mean, possible. It was probably an opportunity because I think he was interested in doing this much earlier, and I think some of the other band members were like, no, we don't want Oliver Stone doing it or something.
Well, they were all excited when they found out it was happening. And then when they read the script, and this is what I learned on the internet, so it's got to be true, that it was just, they weren't into it. Matter of fact, Ray was like, no, fuck that. I'm done. I don't want anything to do with this. This is wrong. And so, which everything I've learned after the fact, I am more enamored with him now than I was when I remember watching this before. Like, I didn't think anything about the other band members before. Nothing I remembered about this. I don't remember anything other than Jim and maybe a little bit of Pam. The rest of this shit, I was like, oh fuck. Him singing, him being him and her, and the music. Watching this, I was like, man, the band just, there was so much more left on the plate that could have been with them. Mm-hmm. Like, I would have rather seen, let's do the first 6 months of the Doors. Them actually, like that scene where they were doing Light My Fire, the beginning of it, right? He's like, you know, pulls it out and he's like, hey, this is what I started, and them coming up and working together, getting kicked out of the house so Ray can figure out the opening and coming back and playing it. Let's get some more scenes like that, like them, these guys, to be in a band like this, right? You know, I mean, and they weren't around for very long. It's like 6 years they were major, and then Jim died. But I mean, you get close in that time when you're spending all your time with these people and everything. I would have rather seen that.
There are choices with these docudramas that are made on whether or not to tell the life story. You know, Ray, you know, Ray Charles, and what was the I'm trying to think of the Johnny Cash movie. Did that cover did that cover his whole life, or was that just a period of time?
I think it was just a period.
Yeah, see, there's a different take on it. We just recently had the Bob Dylan movie, which I haven't seen yet, but I'd like to see it. And I think it just covers a little period of time, and that's kind of what you're suggesting here, is rather than look at the arc of the Doors complete to kind of have this finale with his death. You know, instead, let's just focus in on a certain time. That you're right. Those sort of decisions are riskier. They're kind of he took kind of the simple way out of, like, I'm just going to tell the whole story from the beginning of the Doors to the death of Jim, because to me that's the story I want to tell. But it is almost the easier picture to paint. Whereas, you tell a story that's more about a day in the life, and. Yeah, it could be a much more fascinating story. You're just not going to get the death. You're not going to get the heavy drinking years of the last couple years, or you know, you're going to focus on something, and you could draw a more interesting story out of that. It's possible, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's one of those. Like I said, if you'd have talked to me before I rewatch this, and I'll admit I probably hadn't seen this since maybe 95. You know, it's been a minute since I've seen this, you know, realistically, but I had such a huge, like, oh my God, I can't wait to watch this. And then we're watching it. It's like, why did I want to watch this so badly? You know,
when Steve Jobs passed, he was the Apple creator, you know, the one behind iMacs and the iPhone and all that. 2 movies came out shortly after his death.
Yep.
Jobs, and that was who's the West Wing creator, writer? I'm going to look this up real quick because it's such it's a very iconic name. The creator,
because it was
Aaron Sorkin. So Aaron Sorkin did the theatrical, or the other movie, and then was it Jobs, the one that Ashton Kutcher?
Jobs, is the one with Ashton Kutcher.
Okay. And then the one that Alan Sorkin wrote was Steve Jobs. He didn't direct it, but he wrote it. Interesting enough, if you look at those 2 movies, Jobs is about the life of Steve Jobs. It's much more of an arc, whereas the movie Steve Jobs that Alan Sorkin wrote, he focused on 3 critical moments in the life of Steve Jobs. I think one of them was the release of the original. I think it predates the iMac. It was back when they were more cutting edge. And then the release of the iMac, and then the release of the iPhone. I think and it was all heavy dialogue and showing kind of his character and interrelations with Wozniak and some other characters that were critical. But to me, that was a much more fascinating story and draw because it got into the character. Yeah, do something like that with Jim Morrison. How fascinating, especially when you have people like Ray Manzarek and John Desmond, and these and Krieger, these other characters, and Pam, and this accumulation of these other journalists that
let me
the other
do
character
this
was.
really quick.
Okay,
I'm looking at the two movies, the Jobs, the Ashton Kutcher one, and the Steve Jobs movie.
Yeah.
Do you think the difference in this was the actors?
Well, yeah, well, sure. It was a much.
I'm looking at.
Well, although the box office was sucked on both of them, didn't it? I mean, it's neither of them.
Well, yeah. Nobody really wants to go watch a story about someone who has way more money than anybody else, and we don't care. But I was just looking at it. I was like, you got Fassbender, Winslet, Jeff Daniels in the Steve Jobs, and the only downside is they also had Seth Rogen. So
Seth Rogen played Wozniak though, and it was actually a really good portrayal. He didn't bring any of his
because he could be himself. He had to play someone else.
Right.
Right. But I don't think I've seen either one of these. But yeah, I was looking at. I'm like, that's the top four for the Steve Jobs.
But actually, the Jobs one made 4 times its budget of 12 million. It took in 42 million at the box office. Where the one with the heavy duty cast and the heavy duty writer that focused more on characters and really delved into it. $30 million budget, $34 million box office. So people don't necessarily, they want to see the full biopic story. They want to see like the Queen story, the Bohemian Rhapsody, which was much more of the formation of Queen, and then all the way to Freddie Mercury's death. I mean, it was the same kind of thing with this movie. It was the creation of the Doors and the death of Jim Morrison.
And we're getting way off track here. But I wonder how much of that. No, but I mean, I wonder how much of that has to do with like promotion. Like a good promotion team can get a bad movie a lot of money. Jobs. Steve Jobs may be the better movie, but the promotion side of it is probably very low key. They're not putting out. You know what I mean? It's
a much easier sell if you have someone that has a following, like a Steve Jobs or a Doors Jim Morrison or a Freddie Mercury. That already has a fan base, and absolutely Steve Jobs had a fan base with his, the Apple crowd and stuff. And you say, hey, I'm going to make a movie about their life. That's a much easier sell than, hey, I'm going to make a movie about this moment in their life where you're interacting with characters and stuff. And they're like, I'm not going to invest in that. People don't want to see that. They want to see the whole story arc, which isn't as necessarily interesting. Then we get movies like this, or movies like Jobs, or movies like Bohemian Rhapsody, There was an Elton John movie, and I couldn't get through it. I think I started watching it, but it seemed like
you would never get me in the theater for that. Ever.
It almost sounded like they had a different take on it, like they wanted to turn it into more of a musical about his life. Which
even more reason I would not go.
I know.
I'm just saying, there's certain movies. I mean, Elton John, yes, he's got music out there and he's got his fans. I am not one of them. You could not make an interesting movie. I mean, if you put twice as many boobs in it as you did in The Doors, and I still don't know if I would enjoy that movie. It's one of there's certain things I'm going to be into and certain things. And like I said, I was enamored with this movie for whatever reason growing up and thinking it was great. And then rewatching this, I was like, oh, okay, I've got a different mindset. This is not a movie I would care to watch again.
Yeah. I want to add something when you're done with this. Okay.
Yeah, but what it did to me internally and thought-provoking wise is like, I love the music. I want to know more about the band. I want to know more about the real Jim Morrison. So in a way, the movie fails in the overall, my rewatchability quota for movies.
I was talking to Sydney about that when I was rewatching it. I was like, I don't know why Noah is so enamored with this, because it is so, it took me like 4 sessions to watch this movie, because it was just like, oh my God, this is rough. There's no rewatchability, or at least I didn't think so. I'm glad to hear you say that. That kind of confirms what I suspected is that, you've evolved.
Low. It has very, very little rewatchability.
I want to bring up one comment again back to, and I don't know why I didn't think about this, but why we're seeing more biopics, rather full biopics that start with the beginning and then the death of the character versus just a scene, and why that won't sell. It's because of the death. You tell someone, I'm going to make a story about a person who's died, Amy Winehouse or Jimi Hendrix, or all these people that have lived these. Kurt Cobain, I'm sure there's a Kurt Cobain story, and then you say, oh, but I'm not going to include the death. I'm just going to talk about this 1 week in the life, or and they're going to be like, whoever's investing in the movie is going to be like, no, come back to me when you include the death. Then maybe I'll invest, because that's what people want to watch. People are drawn towards characters that they know they are elevated to a certain. Fame is one thing, but the fame of a dead person. Morrissey, gosh, some of his best lyrics are all about how studios, how the death of a rock star is the biggest boon for a production company that is living off the royalties of a dead star. That's the ultimate. And so so I'm sure the owners of the Doors music, if it wasn't the Doors themselves, which probably was in this case, but made a shit ton of money off of the royalties.
Actually, well, if I remember correctly, it's the two families. It's Jim Morrison's family and Pam's family split the rights after her death, because she ended up with the rights to a lot of his stuff, and then so his portion of whatever then got split between her parents and his parents, if I remember correctly what I heard.
Selena, there's another one. That was Jennifer Lopez, right? Played Selena.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
lots of movies have been made about rock stars that have died young, and you leave the death out, and people aren't. You're not going to get the movie made. That's my theory.
Yeah. So that would be the docudrama, but in a biography, right? That's just talking about the past and things that we believe is our history. Val Kilmer does another movie that is considered a biography.
Sure, I think I know where you're going.
Tombstone.
Yeah. And
I'm so excited. I was excited to watch Doors again before I watched it.
Well, you're thrilled to watch Real Genius too, and that was what started.
I am.
Val Kilmer.
I think that has better rewatchability.
I'm excited to see it because it really highlights his comedy chops, and I think Tombstone does all as well, even though that's not a comic character, but he's such an amusing character to watch because of his timing, because of even the Doors, Jim Morrison. Again, Val Kilmer has impeccable timing with his delivery and stuff, and I think that is drawn from his comedy background.
Yeah, you're right, and yes, but you want to talk about rewatchability. Those two movies, the next two Val Kilmers that we're going to cover, Tombstone and Real Genius,
both of them, Yep.
So rewatchable.
Absolutely.
So rewatchable. I'm super excited because one of the main things I remember about Real Genius is the filling of the popcorn, the Jiffy Pop house.
The big classic. Yep.
It's just something about that. It's just so hilarious and just makes me laugh. I'm really excited. I haven't watched it in a while, but I'm super excited to see that. Tombstone I have seen more recently. That's you could watch Tombstone every year and never get sick of it. And I have some very fun, interesting things to talk about in that one. So I'm looking forward to that one. But yeah, we're kind of doing a Val Kilmer month. We're also going to throw in The Bear, season 4.
Season 4, yep.
And I have you watched any yet?
Yeah, about halfway through.
Okay, I think that's about where we're at too.
It's better than season 3. I'll say that.
I don't know yet.
It's not a high bar. They might have had one bar. That's not a high bar. I'm still not that impressed, but it's better than season 3 for me.
I was gonna say they might have had one of the absolute worst episodes ever in season 4, but
okay,
we'll get there. So no, it's gonna be exciting. July. It's it's looking fun for me. If you're a fan of Val Kilmer, join us because we're going to talk a lot more about him. And we got 2 more exciting movies to come up with him. We're not sure exactly what road they're coming in. You know,
yeah,
we're
our
playing with
schedule's a little back and forth. I know you've got your tournament you're going to in Vegas, and I've got my brother's wedding at the end of the month, and and I think Nina's going to Canada. So we're kind of having to hop around with our normally Wednesday scheduled podcast release. So we'll see how that all goes.
Yeah, I will be in Vegas doing some Kempo next week when we're supposed to be podcasting. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully I'll be a 4th degree black belt by then, and who knows what that'll change in my life. I don't know, maybe that and 50 cents and I can get a cup of coffee. I don't know.
All right. You'll be able to wait. Well, I know that as a 3rd degree you can promote black belts. As a 4th degree, does that give you anything? Maybe you can.
Yeah, I can make them I can promote them to 2nd degree.
Okay. Well, you could promote podcasts co-hosts to hosts in your absence. Maybe that's it.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I got to say is, where's your will to be weird?
Is that from Strange Days? What is that from?
I don't know. It's just, they said it was a quote from Jim Morrison in IMDb. I didn't watch the movie close enough to fucking write shit down. I had to take it from IMDb.
Sorry for calling you out. I don't remember that line.
No. Well, that's usually what I do is I read down them and I'm like, man, I would have thought there would be better quotes in this movie.
That almost sounds like something that the Joker said in Dark Knight, stranger,
Yeah.
Weirder. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, hail Caesars. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Nice. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.